And when we first start Illustrator, it's helpful to just understand the main components you need to pay attention to. So we've got our layers panel, kind of like Illustrator. The layers do function a little differently, and when we were using Photoshop, we needed to make sure that things were on separate layers so that we could move them around and keep editing them, keep them separate, hide them, show them. But in Illustrator, layers are sort of like folders for objects. And so anything, any of these shapes that I'm about to make will show up as individual kind of entities within a layer. So we are not so dependent as we are in Photoshop in understanding or like making separate layers. You can kind of just work in Illustrator and ignore your layers for a little while and then organize them afterwards. So I've just made a square. This is made with the rectangle tool. And I can choose, right, all of these shapes. And we want to pay attention to our color swatches. So by default, you've got a white fill with a black stroke. And if I prefer to have a black fill with a white stroke, I can switch those there. And if I want to have a color, I can double click, choose my color, double click here, choose another color. And then if I want no color, I can choose this none here or no stroke, right? But I do want a color, so I'm going to go ahead and pick a blue. And I'm just going to show you all some basic shape combinations. So I can make a rounded rectangle. If I hold shift while I click and drag, I get a square. And if I want to make an ellipse and I want it to be a perfect circle, I would hold shift down while I click and drag. A little trick is that if when you want to make a shape, it usually makes it from the top left corner down. But if you want to make a shape that, especially in a circle, it's easier to sort of draw it from the center, like pull through the radius of the circle. So to do this, you hold down Shift and Option on a Mac or Shift and Alt on a PC. So I'm going to hold that down, see how my cursor changed, and I click and drag and I'm coming from the center. So just a couple simple things. I'm going to click and drag and I'm going to select three shapes. And if I look at my layer panel, I've got 5 shapes and they are ordered in my layer panel according to which one I made first is on the bottom. And I can select them by just selecting one from the layer. I can also hold down Command and select them in the layers panel. I could also do the same thing by clicking on just clicking once, holding Shift, clicking another one. So the logic here is different than Photoshop, right? You can sort of rearrange these, just click once and move it around your canvas. And I appreciate that sort of organic ability because it lends itself to brainstorming when you are trying to draw or compose shapes. So Illustrator is really powerful for the compound shape function. So we looked at that first, right? We did skullduggery. So quickly, I want to just show you some simple align stuff, alignment. So we've got our align panel on the left, and I want to align these two in the center, right? I also want to align these two to the far left. And I would like to align these two to the far right. but I can show you some options here. I have align to selection chosen, but I could do align to artboard, and then I could say align to the right side of the artboard. I prefer align to selection. So what I could also try something here where I want these two circles to be like aligned right on top of each other and centered. So I'm going to do horizontal align center, vertical align center. So now they're just right on top of each other, right? I'm going to do the same with these rectangles. So one is going to be on top of the other. So in this case, the larger circle here is on top of the smaller circle because I can't select that smaller one. So I want to remove the smaller circle from the larger circle. So I'm going to make sure that the smaller one is on top of the larger one. Select both of them, go to my Pathfinder, and to go to Pathfinder you can go to Window and choose Pathfinder, and you will see this palette here. So I want to remove the top circle from the bottom circle, so I'm going to hit minus front. And now if I kind of zoom in, I've got the shape here. It says it's a compound shape, and I can't select that center circle. It's sort of like a combined shape, which is what I wanted. So here I'm going to do something similar. I've got the smaller rectangle on top of the larger rectangle, and I'm going to move it around and show some variations. So I could do unite, which brings those together. I no longer have any vector points inside. So I united them, and I'm going to try to make something out of this. So I want to make, I'm going to start over. I want to make a key. So I'm going to make a polygon, and I'm going to hold shift so that it aligns parallel to the picture plane. And then I want to make, I want to unite it with, I'll move that to the side. I want to make the bottom of the key, right? So I'm going to choose a rectangle and kind of move it around until I see that it looks how I want, and maybe I'll just say, I want to align that, and so I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to unite it, right? It's important to do things in an order of operations. So you want to unite things before you subtract something from it. If you're trying to unite and subtract more than two objects at once, you'll get a lot of error. So you need to sort of think in a process sense and kind of unite big shapes and then one at a time subtract smaller shapes from it. So I still want to just add shapes because I want my key to have teeth. So I'm going to make a bunch of sort of different shaped rectangles and squares and sort of place them like teeth, right? So I can make a bunch of these little different rectangles. I'm going to contradict myself because uniting is the one place where you can kind of get away with working with a lot of shapes at once with the Pathfinder. I don't recommend it for subtracting. All right, so I'll just go ahead and unite that. That looks good. And then I need sort of a hole at the top here, right? And I kind of maybe need some more shaping at the bottom. So I'm going to get an ellipse, and I want to sort of take out a shape for my key at the back, right? So I could just have a small circle here, kind of like an older key, and I'll select both of those. Make sure that circle's on top of the larger shape and minus front, right? So I'm happy with that. I want to show a variation though, so I'm going to copy and paste it. And maybe I want the top of my key to have, no, I'm sorry, I want the bottom to have a little angle. So I'm going to use the pen tool and make my own shape and line. And I'm going to sort of make a jagged edge, and I'm going to close the shape, select both at once, and subtract one from the other. So you can see that my key is sort of more interesting, has a lot more visual interest than, and it didn't take that long to make, right? So, but I'm a perfectionist, so I need to work on this a little bit better. Okay, let's try that. Subtract minus front. I'm okay with it. We'll leave it for now. Not like totally happy. But I could just select with my direct selection tool. I could just select one vector and use my arrow keys on my keyboard to just move that one vector around, right? If I hold shift and arrows, I can make big jumps. And if I just do one arrow press is a little tiny like pixel point jump. So sometimes people don't see the difference between those two selection tools, but they make a huge difference and help, you know, if I just want to select those points versus I want to select the entire key and move it, there's a big difference, right? So I guess I'm gonna keep working on that. So that is a pretty good kind of rundown of the compound shape tool. And you know, you could do any kind of complication here where maybe we want something decorative on the front. So I'm going to make a second circle here, and I want to align them, and then rather than uniting or minus front, I could think about the intersecting shape or the sort of exclusion of that overlap. So I'm going to do, first I'm going to try an exclusion. It's kind of nice. I like the MasterCard logo. Or this intersection. So I kind of like the exclusion, and maybe I'll just make it a bit smaller. And I don't know, we'll call it a key with a wonderful shape on the front. So I excluded that, but I'm sort of curious what will happen if I take that from the other compound shape. So let's play with that. Oh, that's so interesting, right? So I could only achieve that by doing it in the specific order that I did it in. And so compound shapes are super powerful and great. I'm going to save this. Compound shapes. Go ahead, click save. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing real quickly. Did that help, or was that old news?